Hello, everybody. First of all, of course, thanks for coming and watching the speak. Today, I want to talk about how everybody can do PR. Of course, people working for publishers or PR agencies like I do, that sounds a bit like, whoa, everybody can do that. Why should I hire then somebody? I don't say everybody can do it very good, but everybody can do it. And today I wanted to tell you how you can do it better if you're a small company and can't afford to hire a specialist, or that is just not your field you studied or you're really interested in. So the real question is not is everybody can do PR, but why you should do PR. Because I think there are quite a lot of small developers that really want to make the best game they do and not like kind of waste their time on PR, which is a good point, I think. But if you don't do PR at all, or you do not very good in job in doing PR, there's a thing that could happen I want to explain to you with a very detailed animation I did. So you should do PR because otherwise a thing like that could happen. Let's see that could be you, and you're really proud because you've done something really amazing. The last 2 years you spent every night at the evening working on something, and now it's done because you've written a book, an amazing book, probably the best book ever written. And there's also that is a bookshelf. And now you take your awesome, amazing, really astonishing book and you just put it in the bookshelf. And maybe your friends will come by and read it and find out that book is amazing, or maybe they won't, and nobody will ever hear about your book. So you've done something really cool, nobody hears about it, nobody talks about it. You look a bit like that because nothing really happened and you're not happy with that. Another example, what happens if you don't do PR is you have a perfect first date, everything went fine, the guy, the girl is beautiful, you have so much fun, and after the date, you grab a taxi, you go home, and you never contact them again. So you might as well bump into them, they might call you, but maybe not, and nothing happens. Or you're doing a sprint, you're about to break the record for 100 meters, you're nearly there, and at 90 meters, you're like, oh, might as well take a short break or go a bit slower. Why on earth would you do that? Why on earth would you put so much effort in a game, or not waste, but invest so much time in it, and then not give it the last push or not work on it that people hear about it? So that's the thing I want to talk about you today, how you get the game out there and how you get people to talk about it. Just a short, some things about me, because why on earth would you believe me? So some things, what I'm doing here. I am from Austria, but I work in the UK in Brighton for ICO Partners, which is an agency. It's partly a consulting and partly a PR agency. The consulting part does, for example, Kickstarters, like we worked for that one on Ron Gilbert. We did Strikes at Zero. But we also have a PR part. That's why I work. And I'm the German PR guy. I work for the German-speaking countries to deal with media and also the Eastern European market. We have some bigger clients like League of Legends and Smite and Fractured Space. But we also have a lot of indie games. For example, we had Road Taken and we had Dungeon of the Endless, Evoland, maybe another sort of titles. So not all of them are super big. So we also deal with a lot of small clients. Before that, I was working as a PR manager in Austria's biggest PR agency. They were like really app developer, where I learned some things about the App Store work. They have different clients like Porsche or Haribo. And what really helps me in my job now is I worked 7 years as an editor at Console AT or Console Plus, which was Austria's biggest print magazine about video games, and also available in Germany, also had websites going with that. So I know what an editor, or let's say probably the same thing for a YouTuber, what they are looking for and what they want to find in a game, and how they maybe republish your articles or whatever you want to send them. Besides that, I also worked for a small indie studio. They did an iOS or an Android game. It's called Diskobolos. And with that game, we nearly had any budget. It was like really a student project, but we made it on game trailers. I won a prize on the PR campaign for that. So you don't have to have a really big budget. If you put some work into your PR, you can make it work as well. A content overview for today. First, we start with the question, what is PR and what can you do and what can you not do? Then I would like to tell you the first thing you need to know is to get to know your game. And then we go really into the tools you can use to get your PR done. First, we start with the tools you must have, definitely. The tools, they are nice to have, and they could help you. And the tools that are really awesome to have, but they're really hard to pull off. But if you do it right, that could really give your game a boost. So the first question we want to answer is, what is PR? And I wrote my dissertation in PR. There are a lot of very complicated things, what PR is, how you can define it. But in the end of the day, it's just you get people to talk about your game and you don't pay them. So that's the biggest difference between marketing. Marketing means you give them money and they talk about it. PR means to do something clever or something interesting, and then they talk about your game. What can PR do? On the left, we have your game. In the middle, that is PR, that is the speaker, that makes it loud and everybody hears it. And what comes then? That really depends on your game, because PR, a good PR campaign can get people to play your game, but in the end of the day, if your game is not really good, it won't get a really good reception and people probably won't like it. And if your game is really amazing, people will love it. So PR can maybe like change a bit on how people perceive it if you frame it right, maybe get more people to play it, but in the end you have to make a really good game to make the whole business work. So PR can do miracles on a bad game. The key goals for an indie developer is one of the first things, like all the slides that are coming up, a really important thing is you have to build up credibility. So if people get in touch with you, they contact you, they look up your stuff, it has to look like a real company, it has to look like something interested that they can relate to. Another big part is obviously getting attention, because if you don't have a big publisher in your back, or your game has such a crazy concept that everybody just really wants to play it, it's tough to get attention. So that's an important point to work on. And obviously you want to transport your message right, because if you come back to the example with the book, if you tell everybody you've written an amazing thriller, but then you wrote a fantasy book, they might read it, but then they don't like it because it's just not their genre. So if you don't get your message across or address the right people, you could also fail while you get attention. So let's get started. First off, before you start with all the communication tools and so on, you really have to know to know your game. Because in the end of the day, in the first place, you're not selling a game, you're selling a story. And that story should be easy to understand and easy to get. And in marketing PR, everybody that studied it or wrote something about it, we have that very easy EIDA rule. That's just how people work when you want to get something done with them. The first thing is you get their attention, they think that's interesting, then they're interested in it, read on, and then they have the desire to do something, for example, buy your game or write about it, and that's the action. So all you do, you have to follow that rule in your head to get an easy key message that gets attention first. And to get a good key messages, what I always do is make a friends test. So these are my friends. We're sitting in guards. We're sitting in a round, and some of them are gamers, some of them are not. And they will just ask me, Thomas, what game are you working on at the moment? And then you have like a really short time window because your friends don't want to listen to you all evening. So you have a few sentences, and you better get their attention in those sentences. And that should be like, you could say, oh, I'm working on a game that's a genre mix of roguelike and RPG, and it's a bit of, they won't listen anymore. But if you say, I work on a goat simulator, they will be like, holy crap, what are you doing? And that's the kind of thing you have to get across. You have to get a short message that gets the interest. And sometimes that's really hard to do. Like example, it was for Diskobolos, because that game really was kind of a Space Invaders like arcade game with pinball elements, which you can say to a hardcore gamer, but there's no way, like if I tell that my mom, she will be like, okay, whatever, dinner is ready. She won't pay attention to whatever I just said. So what we did in the background for all our communication, and when we addressed it to people that don't know games that well, we said it was at the time, I also have to mention that in 2012, when casual games were just really booming, and most of the other iOS, Android, hardcore games, they were just like Gameloft games that were rip-offs of other big games. So things like Monument Valley or really quality mobile titles weren't that big at the moment. So our idea's key message was casual is dead, hardcore is back. That's like really an old arcade game where you just try to get the high score and figure out tricks how to play it. And as soon as we changed the title to that and didn't say it was like Space Invaders or something, we get a much better press reception for the game. And for your communications that you do, always keep in mind you also have a big advantage against big publishers, which is firstly, you have the luxury of just targeting a narrow audience, so you don't have to sell like 5 million copies. You probably can sell a few thousand, so you can get much more specialized and it can also crazy in what you do. You're much more flexible to react. You can just tweet back people if you want to. And your company has a face. It's much more personal. You can bring on your own stories. So you have some really good advantages against big companies as well. So let's get to the meaty part where we like talk about tools. First off, We have the must-haves. Everybody that makes a game should have, because otherwise that's like pretty basic stuff. But we also will bring some examples that could maybe help you. The must-have things I think you should definitely have is a nice website, a press kit, and a social media presence. Obviously, a website is a business card. That's the first thing people will look up when they look your game. One tip we give our clients, and I think works well, is to make a website per game. So if a studio with multiple games still make a website for every single game, that's good for SEO. So if people Google your game, it will show up first probably. It brings credibility, and it's also easier to understand. If there's not the whole studio and you explain different games, so just explain one game with simple messages, have your links in there where you can download or buy it. And also, if possible, make the website your own or have a close friend doing it, because you want to stay in control of the website. Happens quite often that people don't have the time and hire a small agency to do that, but then they want to like post something about an update, change the layout or whatever, and they have to go to the agency and buy for expensive updates. And today it's just not really hard to make an own website. I'm a marketing PR guy. I'm not good with programming, but I still Googled how to do websites. And if you use something like WordPress, that's easy to pull off. My recommendation, if you want to use an easy, good WordPress theme that looks good and is pretty flexible, is Endtimes. It's by an Austrian developer, costs like 50 pounds, not that expensive, and works pretty well. Second thing is you definitely want to have a press kit, which is just a zip folder with a package of the most important information about your game. Just for everybody who wants to talk about your game, they just have all information in one place. And then information would be a fact sheet. We'll talk about it in a second. Secondly, would be screenshots. If you do screenshots, to be honest, don't make 1,000 screenshots. Just have 5 really nice screenshots, but pay some attention to detail. Don't overpromise in the screenshots. Show how your game really looks like. But for example, if you're an iOS developer, also show it little details, like have your the bar on the top, look that the battery looks charged. Don't have your mobile network there. Just polish the little details out, and also show the variety of your game. Don't show a title screen with 5 times the same level. Show everything what is in the game. Then you put in some logos. Big advice, if you can afford it, or if you're good with trailers, that could really help you. Like that is one of the things, if I had a really limited budget, I would invest in a good trailer that really shows my game. Short one, just 1 minute, shows the advantages of my game, is nicely done. That's easy to share, and we're just generation YouTube, so I think video content is really important in the matter. And also I would include the press releases you had. We will talk about it in a second. An easy way to do that is a digital press kit. You maybe want to do extra to your website or just a digital press kit. My recommendation would be do press kit. It's from Flambert, developer you maybe know from Ridiculous Fishing or Luftbrowsers. It takes you like 30 to 60 minutes to set it up. I have an example here from Broken Rules. Our local developer heroes did that. It just shows everything that is your game. Also shows about the studio, has all the screenshots to download in different resolutions, has the trailers, has an about section, and so on. So everybody that wants to do something with a game finds all the information in one place. Really handy to have. And in the fact sheet, so that's one PDF or one Word document you want to include in most of the communications or have available for everybody who is interested in the game. And you put in there, you have a game description, you have a feature list, a short about the studio section, a really short section about the game, just 2 sentences that everybody knows what it's about, and an info box. So that's like the box where it's the genre, the price, and the different currencies, and so on. For the intro box, I would say, don't be that guy. Don't be the hipster guy from a band. You would ask, what music are we making? And he would be like, I can't really say the genre. It's such a crazy mix of I don't know what. And if you don't say it, somebody else will. So if you can't define your genre, that's just take the closest thing that people will relate it to. So all information you don't give out, somebody else will. And obviously, kind of a no-brainer, do social media. It's not just to keep in touch with people. It's also they can contact you if something with a game don't works. It's easy to reach. When I was an editor, also really helpful. I was responsible for the indie game section. So whenever there was an interesting game, I saw the release trailer and the launch trailer. I thought that looks kind of cool. Maybe want to check it out. And then I just followed them, and then you keep getting updates and keep getting reminded. So even if you're not the super social media guy, just it's really good thing just to have it. And even if you just post the really important stuff like game is coming on that day, game is out, just something to keep people in touch that want to keep in touch with you. The next thing is the nice to have. And the nice to haves, and not that easy to pull off as the must-haves. And I would say you don't have to have all of them. You will pick whatever that suits you well, and that it can do good and maybe works best for your game. So the nice to haves are news feeds. I will explain what that is in a minute. You should probably do press releases, go on Games Press, get a mailing list, do app store optimization if you're in an app store. Obviously socialize, which you all do already. Have a blog. I will explain about review management, how you should keep in touch with reviewers, and also how you can monitor your game easily. So what is the newsfeed? What we see here is a typical launch cycle of a product. You can see here on the one axis how much effort somebody puts in. That's the dark blue line. And the light blue line is the revenue. And where the revenue starts is where the game is launched. So as you can see, in the launch preparation phase and in the start phase, you do a lot of PR, put a lot of effort into it, and after that it just goes down. So that's pretty much the game is out now, released, and then it bumps down. And the thing that builds up in the launch preparation phase to the start phase, that's where you do news feeds. That's where you send out press release. That's where you release videos. That's where you send out news. So we want to get as much hype as you can before the launch. What are the must-have news feeds I think you should do? Even if it's a small game, you should definitely do a game announcement. If it's your first game, and if it's a small game, probably doesn't get republished a lot or at all. But firstly, it's a really good practice because you have to sit down first and think about what you want to say about your game. You maybe figure out things that are not really interesting or maybe are better to point out. And also, if it's not picked up on the first time, no worries. Might as well someone go back at one point and look back at your release and use that as press material. And also, if you do a game announcement for a first game that doesn't get picked up at all, maybe you just, I don't know, used the wrong headline or promoted it wrong. So for me, it also doesn't hurt to send it out a second time. That's a thing like most press people don't want to hear because you kind of spam them. But if the game doesn't get heard or doesn't get received, it's not out there. So I would say just try the second time as well. You can totally communicate about your first screenshots if they're interesting. First trailer is very interesting, probably get some attention, definitely do that. If you have a game that goes in a beta or in a preview, really communicate that, offer that to friends, to press, to YouTubers. And the last 2 points often get mixed up and some people just release their game and say now it's out, but that's kind of a waste. So one newsbeat definitely is you announce when the game is out and then you actually announce when it's really out with a launch trailer as well. Other news beats you could try to get some attention would be like new assets, video, trailer, concept arts, and so on. Could be new content, new platforms, if you win awards, get sales milestones, and anything that is worth publishing. And how can you find out what is worth publishing for a YouTuber, for press, for Twitch, for Twitter people? You just think what they would think, read your own release, and think, in the role of an editor, should I write about that? Will people read that? Because that's how you very easily find out if it's an update about that fixes some patch, would somebody publish that? Maybe if you're League of Legends, probably interesting. If you're a small iOS game, why on earth would they? So that's like your own thing where you can just try, would somebody republish that or not? Do you see that on the websites? Do you see that on The Guardian? No way. Do you see that on Polygon? Nope. Indiegames.com? Maybe. Okay, then send it to them. Basic things about if you send something to press, to YouTubers, to anybody who want to reach, to everybody's opinion leader. You don't always have to write a full amazing press release. You can do it if you launch a game. You can do it if you announce a game, but it's not always necessary. Most of the time it's enough if it's just a small announcement that you just say, hey, we have a new DLC coming out. It's about that. The trailer is here. Check it out. If you want to know anything else, here's the contact to our website. That's it. Because also editors, they get spammed with emails. So you don't want to spam that as well. You just want to bring your information across as quick as you can. If you send out a full-blown press release, I would always include a short personal text above that and not just send a press release. Just really make one sentence what it is about. And always keep in mind, everything you write should be easy to reuse. So everybody that sees it and wants to publish about it should be able to copy out parts or copy whole sentences. And also, with that in mind, don't go crazy with formatting. Don't send complicated HTML newsletters. Just send a plain text because people can just publish it out and use it for their own purposes. So you make their life easy, and that increases your chance of getting them to talk about you. And obviously, proofread as much as you can, because that just looks unprofessional and takes away your credibility if you don't do it. For the press communication, again, get to the point. And also an important room for everything you send out is keep in mind the hierarchy of information. So you want to start with something interesting first to just get their attention, just get somebody to open the mail. That could be something a bit crazy that's maybe not 100% related to the game, or it's just like a teaser, but it's just like get their attention to open up your mail. Then you go with a personal intro, something interesting, 2 or 3 lines, what your game is about, what the release is about. And if you have the interest still then you go to the phase of desire, where you can put a longer thing that he wants to read, he's actually interested, he maybe reads a feature list, he maybe reads about your game. And if that's also interesting, then you're there where you want to be. That's action. That means he wants to play the game, he wants to talk about it, he wants to publish something about it. Here we have a sample press release we sent out when we announced Fractured Space. As you can see, I hope you can see it, the headline is Fractured Zero, creators reveal new title. So we knew that Fractured Space is not an important title. So what you put first? Fractured Zero. It's quite a big name. It was released on Xbox 360 and PS3 and also on the next-gen consoles. So we knew that most editors knew about it. So we just put that first. There is Fractured Zero, and they're like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then in the first paragraph, we just want to get their interest. So we just say, there's a new game out, and you can check out artwork and the dev diary here. And they will be like, oh, you can actually see something from the game. Might as well check it out. And if they're still interested, then they can read the press release below. That's where the big headline there starts. You can see it here. That's where the proper full-blown press release is, which is also has a kind of a bit of blah blah thing, things that are easy to copy out. So here is how we structure press releases. First off, we have the first headline, which just says what it is really about. A little bit more fancy second headline that says a bit more about the game. Then you go into the intro bit. The next thing is you give out detailed information about the game, maybe add some features as well. Usually you have a quote. You can include that as well, just something about your game, something like the CEO says about the game. Then you link to the assets. If you send out something in general, I wouldn't include the screenshots or something like that as an attachment. I would always make links to somewhere like GamesPress or your website, because if somebody finds that somewhere or wants to forward it to people, it's much easier. You have to just have a link on there and click on it. So attachment might get lost or land in spam, but if you just have a link to something where people can download your stuff, that's usually a better way to handle it. And then you have the about text. Then we come to GamesPress, which is an archive. You should definitely upload your press text there. It's just really a website about the archive where a lot of assets and press releases are. And that's also a good thing. If you need inspiration for press release or press communication, you can look up other games there and see how people handle it there. Next thing is you want to use your press release in a mailing list. If you don't have a mailing list, which you probably don't have at the beginning, figure out 2 or 3 similar titles. Look up, Google like crazy journalists, YouTubers that wrote about it or at one point wrote about your game. If you have budget, get the help of an agency, because usually they have quite good press mailing lists, but you can also build that up. It's just a lot of work, but I think it's worth the effort. And if you send out things more regularly, I would advise you use a mailing software, and MailChimp is a very good thing to do so, because it's for free, and you can filter with different categories. So if you send out mails on a regular basis, use MailChimp. If you have the App Store, we could do an own talk about that, how you place your game in the App Store, but just very short for App Store optimization. Have good screenshots in place, have a good description, update it with reviews, and also spend some time on keywords. There are really good online resources on it. You should look that up. Next point is socialize. If you're at a thing like that, you already did it right. Get in touch with people if it's online or online, meet with them at those local events, and also know the media of your country. If you have the time or you like to write, obviously write a blog on your website. It could help to get in touch with people or just update information about your game. And the next thing is review management. If you send out review keys to somebody, always have a list on who you send it to, because some people just get your keys and they forget about your games. So it's just a good idea to just politely follow up on them. And always keep in mind that Metacritic's websites are really important. That has some reasons. Two of the most important reasons is if you have 4 reviews and you manage to get a Metacritic score, you can use it for your credibility. You can put it in your emails and say, hey, by the way, I was on Metacritic with that score. And that already shows that your game is kind of important and people should talk about it. And another thing that came up recently is that Google started to include Metacritic scores in the search. So if you Google this war of mine, you will see that little box that says the review from Steam and the review rating from Metacritic. So if somebody looks up your game and you have a good Metacritic score, it pops up there. That's pretty handy for you. And obviously, if you're a small game development studio, you don't want to spend ages on monitoring, but there are some things you can easily do and doesn't take forever to just keep the media attention of your game in mind or see what is going on. The basic thing is do Google searches, but do them advanced. So if you know that people in some countries talk about you, go on Google Poland, switch the language to Polish, and then use Google Translate to look and search for your game, because there will be more things showing up than just Google on the Polish Google website. So always switch the language as well, and the best thing is you use the time filter as well. So you just every Sunday you sit down and Google articles from last week and you put them down and just read what's going on about your game. That also helps you to update your mailing list and to keep in touch with people. The next thing is set up Google Alerts. Probably most of you know them. It's just a service by Google where you can enter keywords and they send you mails if it pops up somewhere. So if your game is Fractured Space, they will send you mails whenever Fractured Space is mentioned in some bigger website. And also easy to do is the Twitter search, just with hashtags you did spread out somewhere or just with the name of your game. And now we come to the last part, which are the awesomes to have. And those things are really not easy to pull off. That has a main reason because they're not easily reproducible. So they just work one time and you have to be the first one to figure them out. But I think everybody can do it. We just have to get it right. That's called Guerrilla Marketing. And that's actually not about a guerrilla. Guerrilla Marketing comes from guerrilla warfare, which is, for example, we had that in the Vietnam War, where the American army was the bigger army with the better equipment and big bases. And then there's the small army, the Viet Cong. And they know they're outnumbered and outgunned, so they make guerrilla warfare, which means they come into the American camp once a day, kill 2 or 3 people, burn up a house, and then leave again. And they don't get caught, they don't lose anybody, but the Americans have lost 3 people. And if you keep doing that over a longer period of time, you can still make some impact and even maybe win something. So that's like the guerrilla approach, to have surprise attacks, to do something crazy, something you wouldn't expect, and to also take advantage of your flexibility. So here we have again, what is guerrilla, and if you translate that to marketing, that's guerrilla marketing. That are all marketing actions in public places, street giveaways, PR stunts, flash mobs, and or unconventional marketing ideas. Why would you do guerrilla marketing? Because the monkey has dollar signs in his eyes, so that means something good. It means that you can achieve something with a small budget. It's a relatively untipped field because it's hard to pull off, especially for bigger companies, because it's also sometimes related with legal problems and so on. And for an indie developer, I think not getting hurt is often a much bigger problem than, for example, privacy. So getting attention is a thing you definitely want to do. What are the risks of guerrilla marketing? Often it breaks taboos. What is a bigger problem? It's often not 100% legal. It's often in a gray area. Or you get in touch with the law and maybe have to talk to lawyers. And it's also up to discussion if every PR is good PR. So if you think about hatred, I think most of you have heard about the game. It's a really brutal game, and the core of the game is just that you kill people for fun, which is a crazy thing to do. But in terms of guerrilla marketing, that's a good thing to do because everybody talks about the game. And to be honest, it doesn't look amazing. It's a third person, that's a top-down shooter, but everybody talks about it, and they probably will make profit out of it. They probably will sell a lot because they had something, they broke a taboo, they have people to talk about them. And the budget of guerrilla marketing varies greatly. To give you an idea what guerrilla marketing could look like, I have some examples first for big games and then from smaller games. Obviously, the big games also benefit from the fact that they have big brands or some budget in the background, but we'll talk about the indie games as well, and they don't have those things. So first off, we have the launch of God of War 2 in the UK, and what Sony did, they made a party, ancient Greece themed party. And what they had there were a freshly slaughtered goat and topless servants. People obviously took pictures, and it was in all newspapers. As you can see, it's on the Daily Mail, and Sony even recalled 80,000 issues of the PlayStation magazine. Now that's a bit crazy, but if you think about it, it fits perfectly well to God of War. Maybe they never printed those issues, maybe they just said they did it, and they were on the Daily Mail. And I don't think the Daily Mail would write about the God of War 2 launch, unless you do something crazy like that. Another example, we have Burnout 2, a racing game, and what they claimed did, they said they would pay all speed tickets for the day of the launch, which is completely insane because everybody could just drive how they want and get speeding tickets. And obviously the police said, are you insane? You cannot do that. And obviously Acclaim knew that, so that was just free PR. Again, that was on all major gaming websites and there was on a lot of general interest websites. It didn't cost them 1 cent, just sending out some mails and saying, we're paying for your speeding tickets, but they never did. The next thing we have Lost Planet 2, which is an action game from Capcom, playing on an icy planet. And what they did, they sent out preview copies before the game was released in an ice block and just placed them somewhere in the US. Just placed them there. And people went like, there's an ice block with a game in it, might as well smash it and make videos out of it and talk about it and share it. So that was pretty big. And again, for a publisher like Capcom, what does it cost to place 1,000 copies somewhere? And they get like crazy amount of articles and attention from that. The last example from the big games I like very much is from Dante's Inferno, which was a similar game to God of War based in Dante's Inferno, based on the story. And EA just hired a lot of people for the E3 that demonstrated against the game, and they said they were crazy Christian or extreme, and they don't want to have the game out there, and they had like sayings like trade in your PlayStation for a PlayStation. Again, that for EA that costs nothing to hire like 10 people with like funny signs on that. But they got a crazy amount of coverage. People on site at E3 were like twittering about it, they were talking about it. And that's not a thing that costs a lot of budget. It's just very creative and fits perfectly well to the game. And now we have an example from indie games. That game is, maybe you know it, it was for Velocity 2, it was free on PS Plus. The developers of the game are based in Brighton, like me. And do you know who else is based in Brighton? Our best friend PewDiePie. And Polygon published an article about how you get attention from a guy like PewDiePie. And what Velocity did very cleverly, they just included PewDiePie. And to the right, you see the guys from IGN or ex-IGN members. They just included them in the game. And PewDiePie actually never responded to that. But they tweeted to PewDiePie, you're in the game. And they got like 500 retweets and 3,000 favorites. And that's quite a lot of attention for just including a character that looks like PewDiePie. So that's not a lot of work, gets a lot of attention. Another thing, we have an example from a game called Anodyne. They advertised on Pirate Bay, which is a pretty crazy thing to do. But they were like, people who want to pirate the game, they're going to do it anyway. So we might as well make an advertisement on Pirate Bay. Costed them $7. They sold 5,400 games on that. They sold quite some bundles on that because a lot of people appreciated their effort or their trust in the community. And it just also get a lot of attention. It was on the Structoid, PC Gamer, indie games. And what's also important to know that example is the game by that point was already out for quite some time. So there was like a new speed out of nowhere that gave them extra attention, extra sales that didn't actually do anything besides putting that effort up. Another thing we have, which is not really indie, it's just indie in cost in terms of cost from the shooter Resistance 2. They had just a woman calling people from a mysterious number and telling them, and the woman said to them, good men are going to be killed. Check out that website. They also, they left message on voicemails. A lot of people get freaking scared, which is maybe not a good thing, but they tweeted about it. They did it with journalists, but they also did it with normal people, and all of them were like, holy crap, what is that? They looked up the website and they check out your game, and they tweet about it and write about it. Another example we have from Game Dev Tycoon, which we have also, I think, 3 codes here. And what they did is, at one point in that simulation where you're a game dev, They had 1 point in the game, but only in the downloaded version of the game. So they had a legal and an illegal version of the game. And in the illegal one, at 1 point, your revenue goes down like crazy and you don't sell any games anymore and you can't play anymore. And then the message pops up like, oh, sorry, everybody's pirating your game. You're done. So basically, pirates started to complain about the pirated games in their pirated game. And they got a lot of attention. And that's not a lot of work. You just write that screen and tweak the background data a bit to fuck up the GUIN, basically. So that's a really good example of guerrilla marketing, which doesn't cost a lot. But again, it fits perfectly well to the theme. Doesn't make a lot of sense in other games. And then we have Retro City Rampage, which did some really good things. And one of them was that after the game was released, at 1 point, they just made a playable NES build of the game. It kind of looks like an NES game, but they really made a ROM, which doesn't have all the features. But they just, I think that the devs just wanted to do it and try out if they could make an NES game of it. They did. They made a 10-minute video explaining the technical details. And with that, they got featured on, we saw it before, on The Verse, on Ars Technica, and really big websites, all gaming websites. And again, that was not really super related to the game. It fitted quite well to the style, and it was outside of the launch cycle. So it was just an additional newsbeat for basically nothing. Obviously, the tricky question is how you come up with that. Like that are cool examples, but how do you come up with something crazy like that? Maybe it just pops in your mind, perfectly fine. But apart from that, there are quite some creativity techniques. Some of you might love like creativity techniques, but those things really work. You need some people for that. You need some time for that. You can look them up online. Here are just some examples. One thing is you look at other industries and get inspired by that. Another thing is brainstorming. You can do a proper brainstorming. Maybe you just want to take some friends and go and have some beers. Maybe someone comes up with crazy ideas. They don't have to be related to gaming. It's just really everybody says what he thinks. You try to think out of the box. You don't judge anybody because those ideas sound crazy at first. But if you pull them off properly, that's impressive and can help your game a lot. I've made one example here you can use. So the first one who's doing it, congratulations, we didn't do it. It's not super amazing, but it gets you basically gets you free attention. So if you know that guy, that's Fabian Döhler. That's one, he's like a German-speaking PR legend. He worked for Sega for ages, now working on The Witcher as a PR guy. And he has 7,000 followers. And most of them are like press-related or YouTubers or like some kind of people that are opinion makers in the gaming field. So if you have that guy on your side, that can bring you a lot to get people talking about your game. So one thing would be just include Fabian Döhler in your game. And he has a catchphrase. He always says schade, which means what a pity. So if you put that in and tweet it to him, I guarantee you he will retweet it. And you will reach 7,000 people that are really interesting for you with basically no effort in money whatsoever. That's just because of you know your media and you thought about the thing. So what are the success factors for guerrilla marketing? Most important thing is, I think you saw it in all the examples, like Lost Planet, the Ice Cube, Retro City Rampage with the 8-bit graphics. It has to fit your game, otherwise it doesn't make any sense. And that's the hard thing, to think something that goes perfectly well with your game. The second thing is, it has to be surprising or emotionally touching. And the most difficult thing is, it has to be new and unique. So whenever someone did something like that and you just rip it off or pull it off again, it might work a bit, but probably not really. And the third time, it definitely doesn't work. So it has to be a new thing. That's pretty hard. And we're nearly at the end of today's talk, but for the last slide, I just want to give you 3 takeaways you should keep in mind at the end of that talk. First thing is, before you start any of the things I told you about today, like mailing lists, setting up newsroom, whatever, really get to know your game. Get the key message right, because that will decide anything if the communication of the game will be successful or not. Get the right framing, know one catchphrase that fits your game perfectly well. Second thing is, especially as an indie dev, do everything to be credible. Try that everything looks professional, not in a professional way that it looks boring. It just has to look well done and like somebody thought about it, or has one message and it goes in line. And if you have done the first 2 things right, then you should try to really get attention, because then you're ready to get the attention. And if people want it, and then also make something crazy, and people click on your links in your website, and they actually see something that relates to them, and that makes sense in the kind of the marketing campaign we talked about. That's it so far from my side. If you have an indie game and you just see me standing around, or also I will be walking around and you want to talk with me about your game or show me something, you're super welcome to do so. I'm always happy to check out games. And that's it from my side. Thanks a lot for listening.
Hi, thanks for the great talk. I would like to ask if you are going to publish some things about the game. Where would you publish it? If there are some like really good channels which I don't know, news guys read, or if you just send emails. How do you get the emails? What do you recommend?
How do you get like addresses?
How do you get some idea where to publish your information?
The easiest thing to that is first, when we talked about building up your mailing list, you look at similar titles. Could be similar in the genre, could be similar in the size, and then look up sites that reviewed that or guys that even reviewed that, and then drop them. Just make a mailing list and write an email like, "Hey, you checked out that game. Maybe you like mine as well."
And are there some websites that are like really good for publishing news about games?
There are like dozens of websites.
I know, I mean, like
one thing is there's not like one register you could just look up and you have all cool websites in place. So you really more or less have to Google them. That's the only way. It just takes time. It's not super hard to do, but takes a while. Okay. So thanks a lot.